both speakers have got 10 minutes to talk on a topic, which is to deny women in labour food and drink is okay. I guess we all have our different opinions, but hopefully at the end of today, you will be swayed from being an grazer into one side of the debate. And enjoy it. Nikki Pasapis.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to defend the motion, feeding in labour should be liberal. Oh, I haven't put it on.
That's a different motion than I was given. Don't you just love them? They're Starkist, where are you?
10 minutes is good, that's even.
Oh, that's unfair.
No,
No, that's not the first one.
that's back.
Okay, I'll start then. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to defend the motion, feeding in labour should be liberal. So the definition of liberal, according to the dictionary, is something that is not restricted. Hence, I shall be arguing that feeding in labour should not be restricted. In Hull, we've followed liberal feeding policies for mums, not only in labour but for elective sections for a long time. In fact, for about the last 20 years. So this is nothing new to us. So why should we not restrict feeding in labour? I'll argue this by demonstrating that restriction is a risky strategy for both mother and baby, but also that the only reason for restriction is the fear of aspiration, and this is unfounded. So if I start by demonstrating why restriction is a risky strategy, so let us consider this physiology. So pregnant women are known to have lower fasting glucose levels and to develop ketone bodies and free fatty acids as quickly and to a greater degree than do non-pregnant women. This is because labouring women can be viewed to be in a temporary state of extreme exertion. Fasting depletes the carbohydrates available to do the work of labour, causing the body to metabolise fat for energy. And in pregnancy, all of this is like it happens, so fasting during labour leads to accelerated starvation syndrome. The ketoacidosis produced leads to an unfavourable environment for the baby, unfavourable uterus, and cause prolonged labour. It can. Increasing the need for induction, augmentation, and in nulliparous women, and forceps deliveries and increased blood loss. The mother can feel less in control and therefore contributes to this complex web of side effects in an unfavourable manner. Sorry, we should have been going on with that as we were going along, shouldn't we? So to go on to Mendelssohn, it's 70 years since the publication of the New York obstetrician Curtis Mendelssohn's classic paper, The Aspiration of Stomach Contents into the Lungs During Obstetric Anaesthesia. Nitrous oxide and ether was administered by face mask aspiration occurred in 66 women. 2 died from airway obstruction and 3 who aspirated liquid made a full recovery without the need for intensive care. I would argue that this was a long time ago, this research, and so is unfounded in our society today. And a lot has been disproved of this theory, and much has been written, a lot more liberal policies about fasting for elective surgery. The predisposing factors for aspiration have emerged, and the top 2 are emergency surgery and light GA. And from all of this, sorry, have I flipped over one more? Yeah. There's 4 important facts have emerged. Gastric volume and pH are surrogate endpoints. Indirect, not direct factors influencing the aspiration risk. Gastric emptying of liquids is different from solids and is less likely to be retained like solids. And aspiration is more dependent on the anaesthetic technique than on the fasting interval. GAs are done less often now than spinal spiral sections, and we use drugs to neutralise the acid in the stomach should aspiration occur. We no longer have deaths due to aspiration as indicated by the last few triennial reports. Fasting intervals assume limited importance compared with the other aspects of the anaesthesia regime. So our evidence from the Cochrane review shows that if we ask, does feeding affect the labour experience in terms of nausea? No, but despite the fact that some believe that feeding will cause more vomiting. In terms of the duration of labour, studies show that it may be prolonged for up to 2.5 hours. What about the interventions? So there's no added risk and therefore nothing to fear from giving a mother a liberal fluid intake. This has been reflected by the various professional bodies. The RCM and NICE both recommend light diet and fluid intake for low-risk labours. And the WHO recommendations, Euro recommendations are that there should not be any restrictions on the intakes of fluids during labour, and women with normally progressing labour should be allowed to eat light meals if they need so. The Society of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists of Canada concur that the WHO Euro recommendations stating that a woman in active labour should be offered a light or liquid diet according to her preference. So in conclusion, the world has moved on. There is no place for restriction. If restriction should be imposed, it should be carefully thought through decision based on the risk factors of the mother, weighing the advantages with the disadvantages in collaboration with the mum. Ultimately, it's the mum who should make that choice. So to end, eating and drinking allows a woman to feel normal and healthy, and to deny food could be seen as authoritarian and intimidating for no valid reason. Thank you.
That's Amanda's twin sister.
So, I'm set up to fail, aren't I? Because not only have I been given a different motion to defend, but I've been given a much more difficult one to defend. So my first point was that I'm set up to fail because of the wording of this. To deny women food suggests that I'm evil and wicked. I want to go through women's bags and stop them bringing food into the labour ward. And archaic suggests I'm stuck in the 60s, that I still want to give enemas and shave and keep husbands down the pub. But of course I don't want to do that. I could give you some emotional arguments. I could say, what are we going to do if this woman needs a GA in 3 hours' time and the cherries from that cake are still sitting in her stomach? But I put it to you that actually any objective look at the evidence will convince you to vote against this motion. We don't need emotion. So a quick run through the physiology. Firstly, gastric emptying in labour. I tell you that it is not normal. And this is the paper I want to quote on this. Okay, it's quite an old paper, but it's very easy to understand. In this paper, they ultrasounded stomachs of women who'd had a meal during labour. And they found that 2/3 of women, that's 66%, still had food residues in their stomach 8 to 24 hours after eating. Normally, for surgery, we stop people eating and drinking for 6 hours, but once labour comes in, the pain, the anxiety, concomitant opioids mean that their stomach doesn't empty for 8 to 24 hours. Gastric volume in pregnancy increases. Raised intra-abdominal pressure because of the gravid uterus pushes things out of the way. So the stomach, that's usually sat at a nice angle, is squashed up. It's full of food. It's full of increased and more acidotic liquid. And add to that the fact that progesterone has stopped your lower esophagus, keeping things in the stomach. It's a perfect storm for, if unconsciousness occurs, it coming up the esophagus and down onto the lungs, causing death or morbidity. So what are the problems of fasting? Well, you could say it's not nice, and I think those are the main reasons that we try and stop this happening. But actually I say to you that the other perceived problems are not problems. So ketosis is what's quoted, but actually ketosis is a normal physiological response to not eating. And actually there are other ways of preventing ketosis than stopping people eating. So there are studies that have looked at ketosis and shown actually that no harm occurs to the mother or baby. Dehydration, that could be another argument. Well, I'm not suggesting, I don't think anyone's suggesting that we should stop women drinking water or keeping them well hydrated in other ways. And then, of course, there's the NICE guidelines, which do suggest a light diet for women. But NICE guidelines are just a consensus of a group of professionals, multidisciplinary people, patients who've come to a conclusion. It doesn't actually mean they're right or that it's the safest option. I'm wanting to quote this from Geraldine O'Sullivan, a great obstetric anaesthetist who unfortunately was taken from us young. But it's in the BMJ, and the anaesthetists don't get many articles published in the BMJ, so it's an important article, and that's why I've chosen this. She looked at 2,500 primates and randomised them to light diet or to water. She found no difference in neonatal or obstetric outcomes in either group. So I say to you, that was just water, and I'm not actually suggesting that, but giving just water doesn't mean you're going to get tired, exhausted women with ketosis who can't push their baby out. You're not going to get acidotic babies. There's no evidence for that. It's speculation, and the evidence doesn't support it. So what about aspiration? Is this a real risk, or just anaesthetists getting their knickers in a twist? Well, the first thing I'd like to say is this isn't just relevant for anaesthetists. We always say, if we do a GA, it'll be a risk. But it's a risk if the woman becomes unconscious for any reason in your labour room, they become unconscious, they're at risk of aspirating and dying. The first thing I'm wanting you to quote is NAT4. This is the National Anaesthesia Project audit, which looked at airway problems. And this is a direct quote from it. Pulmonary aspiration was the commonest cause of death. This wasn't looking just at obstetric patients, but all patients in the country over the entire year. And they found if you have a problem with your airway in any way, it is likely that you're going to aspirate and it could cause death. And we don't think it's a problem. Why is it that UCOS, the UK Obstetric Surveillance System, are actually collecting data on this at the moment? They haven't finished collecting data. So who are we to say it's not a risk? They're concerned enough to study it. And the triennial reports, which keep getting different names, are continuing every now and again to report deaths. And it's not just deaths, there's also morbidity. If a woman aspirates, they'll probably need to go to ITU, they get pneumonia, pulmonary collapse, they may need bronchoscopies, and this is all in those first few days of life when they should be bonding with their baby. And for the sake of bit of a sensible guidance for what they could eat and drink in labour, could have been avoided. So what are our options? Well, we can either risk stratify women or treat everyone as high risk. Our preference in the UK has been to risk stratify women, and that's why we get these confused and vague and muddled guidelines going about, because people think that they can predict who may or may not become unconscious, who may or may not need a GA. We might be able to guide the risk a bit, but we can't really predict it. So the problem with this is, first of all, how do you define high risk? All primates? People with previous section? It's really difficult. And what is certain is you'll never predict them all. So you're always going to get women who do become unconscious or need a GA who you haven't expected to. And if they've got a big stomach full of food, it's a dangerous combination. And the problem with risk stratifying and having variations between different women is the guidance is woolly. The advice during antenatal clinic is woolly. People don't really know what's going to happen, and so everything's a little bit woolly. Now, if we treated everyone as high risk, which I understand they do in large areas of the States, well, it's completely different, isn't it? The guidance then is very clear. Everyone knows the advice. Everyone's singing from the same hymn stream. Women come in expecting not to eat in labour. And they come in prepared mentally and expecting that. They should avoid food altogether. We can avoid dehydration with ketosis with energy drinks. Nice flavoured ones. We're not talking about your caramel latte. We're not talking about innocent smoothies here. We're talking about good, healthy drinks. The sort you'd give an endurance athlete. And that's what you're doing. You're treating them as endurance athletes on their big day. So, to deny women food and drink in labour, is it archaic? Vote against this motion. I say the food will stay in the stomach. We cannot predict who will become unconscious, whether it be for a GA or by accident. They may then aspirate. And not eating, but having energy drinks, will do them no harm at all. No harm. Thank you.